Last week I went on a photo walk with my Pen F here, and I had dialed in a Kodachrome 25 film simulation, which, I really love the colors from that. So I wanted to share with you how I programmed those into the camera and saved them to the custom mode on the mode dial here, C1, C2, and C3. And I'll explain why I'm using 3 of them. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I've already done a full factory reset on this camera, minus a couple of minor settings. But let's go into the menu, and what I'd like to do first is set up the camera the way I like to shoot normally with the normal natural Olympus colors. So first thing I do is I put it into aperture priority, which is also indicated here, and then I'll go into the super control panel, and I'm just going to change a couple of things here. I'm going to change to a single point focus. I like to shoot with anti-shock. And then I'll shoot RAW plus JPEG. And I like to turn off face detect, not that it matters because we're in single point focus anyway. And that's pretty much it in the control panel. And then I like to open the lens up as wide open as I can. And this number down here, f3.5, it depends what lens you have attached, but I have the kit lens attached. So the widest it'll go is f3.5. And then I'll go into the menu. And first thing I'll do is in the settings menu, I'm going to go down here to display and turn on my grid to standard rule of thirds or whatever that one is. And then for the JPEGs, turn the noise filter off. And my ISO settings, the auto settings, I like to just use the maximum. So I'm going to dial this all the way up to 25,000. Because I don't care about grain too much. I'd rather have a sharp picture than grain. And I also like to use ISO auto in manual mode sometimes as well. But we're going to be shooting in aperture priority. And then, let's see. I don't think there's anything else I'd change. Oh, there is, in here. I like to change the JPEGs to be all super fine, so I get the maximum JPEG quality possible, like so, and then I turn off the keep warm colors. And I think that's it. Now, I want to save all of these to C1. So I'll go back into the menu, I'll go up to camera settings or shooting menu number 1, go down here to assign, click right again, then click OK. Now everything I just did has been saved to the C1 on the mode dial. So I'm going to dial in to C1, and if I click the control panel, everything looks good here. Now let's go ahead and dial in the Kodachrome 25 profile. So I'm going to turn the creative dial to the color mode. Alright, so I'll put a link down below to GarethB's post at the MU43 forum where I got these settings from. But I have them on the screen now so we can kind of follow along. And Gareth put the settings in the same order that you will find them on the color wheel. So now that we're in the color mode, we can just hit this jog dial here at the top and then start rotating and changing colors via the rear dial one by one. And then we move the front dial to change through the different colors. So the first one is yellow. Now be careful because sometimes it says all, color all, and then if you change things, it changes them all at the same time. But right now everything is set to neutral, 0. So I can either click the front dial one click, or I can click the info button one time, and that'll put me into single color mode. So the first setting he recommends is a -2 on the yellow. Then the next one is +1 on the orange, +1 on red, -1 on pink, -1 on magenta, +2 on purple, -3 on blue, -2 on aqua, -4 on cyan, -4 on mint, -4 on green, and -5 on lime. And that's it there. So let's see, the next thing he recommended was the shadows. So I click the jog dial here, then I'll click it again. Now this one he didn't recommend, but I like to do this. I like to dial in just a little bit of vignette, because you can go up and add a white vignette, or you can add a sort of a black vignette, just to kind of mimic sort of a vintage lens, I guess, or give it that feel. But let me click the jog dial again. I'll click it again, and you can see as I'm toggling the jog dial, it goes through the 3 different modes I can change. Now the next one are the highlights and shadows, or the tone curve. And right now it's on mid-tone, so I'm going to click the info button so that I'm on highlight and shadow. And he recommends a -5 on the shadow, so I'm going to use the rear dial for that. And then a -2 on the highlights, so I'm going to dial that in using the front dial. And then I'm going to click the info button and dial in a +2 on the shadows, or mid-tones I should say. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is go back into the Super Control panel and tweak the white balance just slightly here. So we're going to adjust this amber, looks like -2, and green +2. And then he also recommended changing the contrast to +2. Now, that's everything. So let's go ahead and save that to custom menu, or custom mode number 2. Just like so. So now if I want to use custom mode, or that Kodachrome color profile, I just have to dial the top dial to C2. I can take a picture here. If I want to go back to my natural Olympus color profile, I just go back to C1. And you'll notice that I didn't have to change the creative dial on the front back to off, which would be top center. Because honestly I could not tell any difference between Olympus natural color profile and color profile number 1. But you can turn color profile number 1 off, put it on C1, and we'll take a picture there. And if I want to go back to Kodachrome 25, I just go to C2, but you'll notice if I click OK, I'm in natural color profile. I need to turn the creative dial back to color, like so, and you can see our color settings are still there. And if I click OK, everything else has changed back. -2, +2 here. Now let me show you something you have to be careful with. Is when I'm in C1, which is my normal Olympus natural colors, if I click the jog dial here, you'll notice everything is set back to 0. Because when I'm in C1, color profile number 1 in C1 is default. In C2, color profile number 1, if I click the jog dial, you'll see has all of the Kodachrome 25 settings we just did. So just be aware of that. Simply changing the creative dial to color mode, it depends on where you saved it in the custom mode dial. It's also true for all of the other modes. Like if I go back to, let's say I want to go to shutter priority, even though I'm in color profile 1, if I click the jog dial, you can see that it's in the default color profile, not the Kodachrome 25. So just be aware of that. Now the benefit is you can program several different film simulations via the C1 through C4. And I might get into that later. It's still confusing me a little bit how to do everything right and be able to tell you guys how to do that. But for now, that's just something you have to be careful with. Now let's take this one step further and go into C3. Because as you can see here, I have my Olympus OM2N. And I want to mimic this camera as much as possible with my Pen F. So what I'll do is I'm going to go into C2, so that I'm in the Kodachrome 25. I'm going to go into the Super Control Panel, and I'm going to change the white balance to sunny. Now you'll notice how these amber and green white balance adjustments have changed back to 0. So I'll need to change this back to -2, this back to +2, and I'm going to change the metering to center weighted metering, just like I had in the OM2N. And I'm going to turn off the IBIS. And then I'm going to put this into ISO low, because Kodachrome 25 was essentially ISO 25, and the best we can do with this camera is ISO low. And then all I need to do is save this into C3. And we're all set. Now this camera is going to behave very, very similar. Oh, one more thing. Manual focus. That's right. Let's go ahead and save that again. Like so. So now this camera is going to behave very, very similar to this camera. Virtually full manual, but we're in aperture priority, and this camera had aperture priority basically as well. Via the manual aperture ring, right? And that's, you know, that's how I shot that day on my photo walk, was exactly like this. Because film typically came in, you know, preset white balances, and most of the time people bought the sunny white balance, so that's why I chose sunny. Because you get very nice colors, I think, when you're mixing, particularly in street shooting, mixing like sunlit areas and then there's shadow areas, and the colors are very interesting when it's not auto white balancing everything. You're sticking with the sunny white balance. But now what I'm going to do in my next video is I'm going to show you guys how to do this, because if you don't have a Pen F, you can program all of these settings using the free Olympus Workspace software. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you again next time.